Well, hello, everybody. How are you? Whoa, I got a little bit too much light on me there. Wow, that's a lot coming from this direction. Give me a second. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. How's it going? I'm Drew Lentz, the wireless nerd, and clearly I'm having some issues today with my countdown timer. You know, it's what happens when you try and do something new. So I was gonna, add a little fun timer on there, and for some reason it just didn't update. But that's okay. Anyway. How's it going? I'm Drew Lentz. I'm here to talk about what's new, what's now, what's next in the wireless industry. It's the summertime, so there's not a lot of craziness going on. Been some really cool updates on LinkedIn, seeing some people pick up some jobs, which is great. People moving around, which is fantastic. Love to see it. Love to see the movement happening in the industry. But let's see. We got some stuff to talk about today. Not a whole lot going on, but definitely a couple of key items here that I wanted to pop up. It's been an interesting week. Let's see, since last week, aside from all the other stuff that's happening in the news that we're not going to talk about, what I will talk about is seeing people post a lot of stuff on a lot of social stuff and personal stuff and politics and things on LinkedIn. How do you feel about that? Because I like to keep LinkedIn just with the business stuff, just with people that I know from the industry or people that I want to know from the industry. I like to keep it in one little happy silo away from everything else. And I don't know if everyone is like that, but that's how I feel. I like to keep that little area just clean. That's what Twitter's for, right? Twitter or X seems to be there's a lot of stuff going on there. And I saw some posts of some people saying the same things. There were some people that reported some different posts that were posted on LinkedIn because it was like, hey man, this is an environment where you should keep the work stuff to work stuff, keep the social stuff to a minimum. So I don't know how everybody feels about that. I'm sure that there's a number of different opinions either way. What I will say is that I was on that email chain. I don't know if y'all saw what happened with Sticker Mule, but Sticker Mule decided they sent out an email that was done as a marketing campaign, but I don't know that it went over the way that they thought it was going to go over. And I saw a lot of blowback from that. A lot of people posting online. I think they were trying to capture what was happening and then, in like a cheeky kind of way, say that this is, an opportunity to pick up some items from them. But I don't know that it went over as well as they thought it did with a number of different people. Give me 1 second. Let me check my mic here and make sure. Yep. I can hear myself, which is fantastic. Anyway, so I saw that, but I think that's that's an interesting topic, right? As we get closer into the election season in the United States, and we get closer to the political stuff that's going on, keeping it siloed, is that important? I don't know. I mean, I have my own views that I post on my own personal stuff, but I try not to post anything on work stuff just because I don't think anyone will appreciate it. I don't know. They say, what are the things they say you're not supposed to talk about? Sex, religion, and politics. So let's steer clear of that. Let's talk about wireless. Sexy, religious, politically correct wireless. Anyway, whatever. Well, let's see. What do we got going on today? A couple of different things. I want to talk about the last one, or the first one third. And I know that you can't see my list, so you don't know what that means. But I'll talk about the first one first. Speaking of politics, net neutrality, the orders for net neutrality were blocked Saturday by the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals until August 5th. It's interesting because, we thought with the new FCC coming in, and with the new commissioner coming in, that net neutrality was going to make that comeback and say, hey, it's equal and fair access to everyone. But however, the Court of Appeals said, nope, we're going to block that for a minute until we get more information and see what's going on, because net neutrality is a big deal. I know that there's lots of carriers that think very strategically about net neutrality and about what that means for them. But I also know that there are a lot of wireless ISPs that think about net neutrality and what that means to them. I mean, if you're a local wireless ISP, and again, this isn't speaking for anybody in the industry, this is just my own thoughts, right? But if you're a wireless ISP and you only have a limited amount of capacity on your antenna, right, on your base station, you want to make sure that it's being used as best to the ability for all of the users. And does that mean that, one user gets to download, consume more of that capacity by downloading movies, whereas the illegally versus the other person who does it legally do they have a right to download? Does illegal activity still constitute their ability to get online. That's a little bit of the argument, right? It's like, well, if you force net neutrality and you say, hey, the service provider can't get in the way, then it's a different perspective, I think, from the wireless ISP side. Granted, I see it from the carrier side or from the network operator side, where you could say, yeah, we want to be able to limit what's going on or what's going down the pipe, or maybe sponsored throughput, or maybe if you're a big conglomerate and you want to make sure that people get your movies faster than they get other people's movies, and they're using your infrastructure, so it's your infrastructure, man. They're paying to get on your service. They're paying for your service. Give them the benefits of that service. Net neutrality is such a tough topic to get around. So either way, it popped up, and the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals said, wait, no implementing net neutrality until they can rule again on August 5th. So now, speaking of net neutrality and speaking of wireless internet service providers, Starlink Mini. I asked the question a couple weeks ago, hey, does anybody know where to get a Starlink Mini? Well, now everybody can get a Starlink Mini with its widely available distribution in the United States with roam download speeds of 50 megabit per second. It'll cost $5.99 and comes with a 30-day trial. There will be 2 plans to choose from. But you know what? I don't know if you still have to have, before you had to have an existing Starlink account in order to take advantage of the Mini. And I don't know if that's the case anymore. I wonder if I just go to starlink.com and I go click on a link. I wonder if I can just order a Mini without having, it says order may now, stay connected. Oh, no, that's a commercial. I don't want to watch the commercial. Order now. No, it doesn't say that you have to be tied to any account. So I think you can do it on your own. Either way, I'm getting pretty excited because I hope, that's what it looks like. Starlink Mini now available. No long-term contracts. 30-day trial. Arrives in 1 to 2 weeks. Standard is $4.99 on the hardware. The Mini is a $5.99. Service is regional for $150, or Mini Roam, which is $50. And you can just tack on the $50, $50 a month for the service, and $5.99. Dude, that's kind of insane. $50 a month for 50 gig. Oh, 50 gig. Okay, well. There you go. You can pause the service. If you exceed the maximum allotted plan on Mini Roam, you'll be unable to access the internet except to access your Starlink account. Wow! If you can opt in for additional mobile data. See, I'm learning as I go here, folks. I think I'm gonna get one though. I think I'm gonna get one because I want to see how well it works in Alaska. Let's see. It should work pretty well up there. It's from the perspective of the satellite, right? Access is access. Anyway, so I'll dig into that a little bit, but y'all should know it is available now, which is pretty neat. I've seen some posts online with people posting stuff from their minis, and I think that that's really neat. I think that it's pretty cool to have internet access where it is. And if you take that a step further, I know that there was an announcement this week somewhere. I don't know if it's an official announcement, but someone was showing that the SKUs were now available at Target and Walmart for Starlink. So being able to pick up Starlink at Walmart and Target, I mean, God, with my feet firmly planted in the wireless industry and the wireless internet service provider space in the industry, it is so insane to watch this happen, to watch a single service provider have the coverage that they do at the cost that they do with the reach that they do, and getting into national carrier, national markets like Target and Walmart. Wow, it's crazy. But I mean, it is where we are. So good for them. Good for Project Kuiper coming along. Good for Hughes, and this is great for everybody in the LEO space, in the satellite space. I don't know what it means for anyone else, but man, you got to believe. We just had a big outage here in the state of Texas where Spectrum went down for almost the entire day. They blamed Beryl, which everyone kind of rolled their eyes at when they say that they blamed the hurricane. But it was like, oh, and then they said a third-party provider. But when that happened, I failed over to Starlink here, and I know some other people that did as well. So being able to have that as an option, it makes you really wonder, well, why am I paying someone for internet service if it has the opportunity to go down? And Starlink, unless satellite falls out of the sky, unless he says stranger things could happen. It's been a hell of a week. Anyway, in other news, the AT&T fallout is continuing. The AT&T fallout is a big deal. Every AT&T cell phone, text messages, data information, or data and information and phone call information and everything leaked. It's gone. I mean, it's out. It's out there. It's a massive breach. AT&T cell, text, all that stuff. I mean, just the text messages alone. Imagine what that's a treasure trove for anybody. I mean, it's if you think about all the things that can be done with that data, God, that's so much data that's out there. And how does AT&T come back from? I mean, I'm not an AT&T user, but I'd be terrified. I don't have anything bad. I've got a whole bunch of voicemail messages from my dad. I want to listen to his voice every once in a while, so I listen to my dad's voicemail messages. But I mean, I'd miss that. But I don't have anything weird on my phone. But just to think that all that data could be valuable to someone, that's pretty tough. So the AT&T data breach, if you didn't hear, basically it affected every user on AT&T's network, and it was all of their call information, their text message information, their account information. All of it was leaked. I don't even know to what extent. Credit cards, passwords, I don't know, but it's tough. If you're an AT&T subscriber, I mean, pay special attention to that. That was what was going on. I don't know if there were any other big news announcements. EchoStar opened up a Wyoming O-RAN test lab. That's pretty cool. Good news for O-RAN. Public Wi-Fi is table stakes, but unsecured Wi-Fi is a risky business. This from the Reader Forum and RCR Wireless. We covered this in depth, in detail, but I will talk about it again. You got to look for some type of alternative. I had a great conversation this week with a buddy, an old friend, a supermarket chain, where we were talking about PassPoint, and we were talking about the death of the captive portal and what that means to hospitality. I mean, really, here we go. Ready? We're going to go into soundbite mode. Let's see if we can do a 30-second clip on PassPoint for the death of captive portal. Ready? Here we go. Let's put on radio voice. What does the end of the captive portal mean for the hospitality industry, for the retail industry, and for anybody that uses captive portals? This is a big deal with Apple iOS 18 and the announcement of Mac randomization. Now, anyone who uses a captive portal is going to be in a tough situation where their access won't be able to use that captive portal anymore. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You think it'll work? You think that'll be viral? Let's go wireless viral. But it begs the question, man. I mean, it's a tough one to figure out. But I love the idea of using PassPoint. I love the idea of using PassPoint to authenticate people and to allow people to grab that 802.1x certificate and tie it into a mobile app. And the thing that this week that I thought was fascinating, and I think I've talked about it before, is that Apple was trying to help everyone's privacy by saying, no, we're just going to randomize your Mac, and that way people will never know it's your device connected to their Wi-Fi network. All right, well, if someone uses a certificate that is given to them, an authentication mechanism using a certificate that's provided to them by the group, by the hotel or by the hospital or by the retail space, and now it's tied to their member ID or their user ID of their application of their mobile app. Well, dude, that's a treasure trove of information for the people that are leveraging that. So now I've got access not just to where they are and where they go and where they spend their time, but now tapping into the app. Now I've got their loyalty information. I know how much they buy, when they buy, where they go. I know how many times they drive past a different venue. I know how much time they spend. I know how long it takes them to step in. I know how much time they spend in a parking lot. I know what their schedule looks like of when they're going to show up. Dude, I've got more information now because we've been forced into this by Apple, where it's like, well, dude, you guys are trying to protect the privacy side of it, but now you've really opened up the floodgates for people to be able to obtain so much more information about user habits by leveraging something that has to tie in, that there has to be a connection, a secure connection to tie into their device. And I mean, if you're going to tie into their device, you might as well throw the loyalty information on there as well. So I expect big things from you, industry. From the captive portal industry, I expect an incredible pivot that is going to give so much great detailed information to the people that are using and making guest networks available, using Wi-Fi and making guest Wi-Fi networks available. I expect big things, big, secure, happy things. The downside is, as much as I expect it, if you think about now being able to have pinpoint accuracy of where people are inside these stores, what does that look like for the future of advertising and monetization of that information? I guess we're going to find out. So that's a little bit about what's going on there. Those are kind of the two main things I had. Wyco, the wireless community, man, I had that FOMO last week. I didn't want to talk about it, and then Fernay brought it up and said, we're all here in Manchester. And I was like, oi, mate, I wanted to go to Manchester, but that didn't get to happen. They just ran a poll. I was just looking at this. WICO, the wireless community, y-co.org. If you go to WICO, they just ran it. They said, have you been keeping up with the events? Where should the next WICO event be? Vote for your interest. They had Austin, Nashville, Philly, and Washington, D.C. 36 votes. The polls are closed. Nashville, Tennessee won with 33%, followed by Austin, Texas, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at 25% each. Washington, D.C. down at 17%. I don't know if they're actually going to be able to do that or not. It would be pretty cool. WICO is really, really neat, and it was so cool to see everyone in the industry support that. You know, the last thing we want to do, and, you know, they talk about the herd, right? Last thing we want to do is get the herd and slice the herd up into a whole bunch of different pieces, and I think that's some of the concern, is that if you have too many wireless events, you can't have any really big, good wireless events, right? But, you know, with the CW&P folks not having their events anymore, there was space, I think, in the industry for another industry event. And this one's localized and it's smaller. I just don't want to get, calloused over with the events. Oh yeah, I'll just go to the next one, or I'll just, it's the same speech they had at this one. And I feel like some of that already happens in some of the different shows, where it's like, oh, I just heard that person speak, 3 months ago, and it was the exact same thing, and there hasn't been anything new. So I hope we don't get any of that comes into it. I don't think there will. The WICO group is a good group of people. But how does it compare to WLPC? Elephant in the room, he says. I get the logo for WICO is an elephant. So, but to see Keith there and to see the whole WLPC crew at the WICO events was really neat. So we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. I'm all for it. I think it's great, and I think it's great that there's opportunities for vendors to have their little showcases out there, to have their little tabletops set up. I think that there is a need for that type of event when it's done right, and I think that WICO is doing a good job at that. And I don't ever foresee WLPC going in that direction where there's vendor-sponsored booths. So that's okay. Let's try and keep them in their own little silos and see what happens. But you never know. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. Either way, I did ask Peter, if you're listening, I'd love to host one of these in South Texas, because nobody ever comes to South Texas, and you will never see someone going to say, oh, we should totally have a WICO event in McAllen, Texas. I'm here to tell you, folks, I would be happy to do it, even if it's me and 3 other people in a conference room. Bring it on. I'm in. I'm volunteering to host a mini WICO event. What else do we have going on? We've got Wi-Fi Now coming up in Europe. We've got WLPC coming up in Prague. We've got WLPC coming up in February in Phoenix. And what else is happening? Let's see. Let's go scroll through the news real quick. Let me pick a random article and see what it says. Telecom Egypt taps Nokia for country's first 5G network. Whoa, okay. That's interesting. Full dev behind our build of Space Marine 2 leaks, and players are already leveling up. Didn't read about that one. I don't really have too much time to play games, so I don't focus on that. Record label sue Verizon for not disconnecting Pirate's internet service. That's an interesting one. That's, we'll see where that goes. Net neutrality rules temporarily stayed as judges weigh impact of SCOTUS ruling. Yeah, I mean, that's the elephant. Go back to the elephant in the room. That's the big deal with the ruling that came down from the Supreme Court. How will that? Shoot, I didn't even think about that. I don't know how. Maybe not Chevron, but it says the Supreme Court's decision last month, Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo limited the regulatory authority of federal agencies by overturning a 40-year-old Chevron precedent. Chevron gave agencies leeway to interpret ambiguous laws as long as the agency's conclusion were reasonable. How is that going to affect net neutrality? We'll find out. I hate to even think about that. And yeah, well, whatever. That's for a different social media platform. Okay, so all that being said, there is something I wanted to talk about real quick, because Drew over at Broadband Breakfast had a really cool summit talking about open access. And so I wanted to share my viewpoint on open access to try and get some clicks. I'm just kidding. I wanted to share it because I think I like my viewpoint on it. I like my perspective on it. I don't know if anybody else does, but thanks for listening. I do appreciate it. Turn off now if you don't want to hear my perspective on open access, because this is a drum that I've been beating for a while. And there was a gentleman that I got to meet a number of years ago who moved down to South Texas, down here where I live, and he was adamant that this place was going to be something incredible in the future. And lo and behold, SpaceX and all the stuff that's happening, Kai wasn't too far off the mark. Unfortunately, Kai's no longer with us. But his legacy remains a little bit, because he did a lot of really cool work in sub-Saharan Africa, and he did a lot of work in a number of different up-and-coming or impoverished communities and economies. And one of the things that he talked about, stop me if you've heard this before, is building out infrastructure and getting a main tenant to build out that infrastructure, like a city, a municipality, a community, a carrier, whatever it is, and then figuring out ways to make that infrastructure available in an open market and friendly way that people could jump on it and they could use it to help spread, I guess, and encourage to some extent competition to drive better communications opportunities for people that are using it. So in this idea, this is open access, right? So now here we are 10 years later, and we're talking about open access where a lot of these communities are saying, let's build out fiber networks, and then let's have a third party. It's here a two-step or a three-step process from what I'm understanding about the way that was being discussed on Broadband Breakfast, where you have someone build out the network, and then you have someone manage the network, and then other people are free to use that existing infrastructure, that light, that fiber, that physical connection to be branched off into different multiple providers. Because once the fiber's laid, like once the fiber's sitting in the ground, why not open it up? Why not say, hey, carrier A, B, C, and D, use the infrastructure that's already there. It's already in place. Pay us a small fee for using it. And now that offsets the cost of that infrastructure so you can offer lower prices to the people in our communities. And that's really cool, right? The community gets to benefit from that. What Kai and I talked about years ago, and I wrote a blog about it even on WirelessNerd.net, is doing the same thing with wireless. And all of a sudden, look at this. Now we've got spectrum slicing, right? It's the same thing. Why not take, just like an MVNO operates on, 4G and 5G services and network slicing and doing all that stuff. Why not do this on Wi-Fi? Why not do this on point-to-multipoint? City of McAllen, where I live, for example, we have a big Wi-Fi network. Covers a lot of the city. About 80% of the city is covered with it. Why not be able to provide SSIDs for different people that want to provide services in the community? Maybe one SSID could be free as long as you watch an advertisement. Maybe another SSID could offer limited access unless you want to pay for an upgrade. Maybe another SSID could offer a premium upgrade if you subscribe to their cell phone service or whatever it is. But the idea that open access is finally taking this huge leap and that people are talking about it because of fiber is really cool. I think that's part of the infrastructure conversation, that this is that next iteration of it coming into 2024, moving into 2025. Now that more communities have developed fiber to the home and fiber to the location services, really start to leverage that infrastructure that's already been put in place. And, in City of FAR, for example, which is my next door neighbor, they've got this really cool network that they've built out. It's all fiber to the home. It's paid for by revenue from the International Bridge and the port down here in FAR. And so they're paying for all this infrastructure to be in place. But, why not leverage that? Why not invite other local carriers to be a part of that and say, look, you guys already have all of your connections to the internet. When does the City of FAR move into just managing the network, managing the infrastructure, and making it available to third-party services to really take advantage of it? I'm not going to say that cities shouldn't be ISPs or municipalities shouldn't be ISPs. Dude, if you can, do. But there's a lot of can. I mean, it takes a lot to put together an internet service provider. Anyone who's done it is rolling their eyes right now because they know I've built some of these things and they are not easy to build. They're not easy to run. Why not let the ISPs be the ISPs? Why not let the municipality be the infrastructure provider? I mean, this is the same thing as tollways. Build the streets and then let other people come in and prioritize the lanes or whatever. So I love that open access is part of the conversation. I loved hearing about it on Broadband Breakfast. If you haven't listened to Broadband Breakfast, please tune into them. They have a great show, and they record so much quality content. They've got a summit coming up in September 19th. They have a summit coming up in the D.C. area. They're much more involved at that level, like at that D.C. level in the United States. So please, if you have any interest in contributing, shout out to Drew. Tell him I said hi. Check out Broadband Breakfast. They do a really good job of covering it. But I think, this is that next step. Okay, once you solve that fiber connectivity problem, once you solve, putting the stuff in the ground, then what's next? What's next for these municipalities? Are they just going to run it? I mean, dude, it takes a lot to build that ISP. And what are the demands going to be once it's in place? I was hearing some interesting numbers too. 20-30% is on average 30 or 40% if it's operating well for take rate. And maybe I'm wrong, Drew. I'd love for you to clarify that if you're listening. I'll send you a message. But imagine that on wireless. Imagine if you set up a rural wireless internet service provider, imagine that the county does it, or imagine that a co-op does it, in some of these farming communities, agricultural communities, and then you just broadcast different SSIDs like an MVNO for wireless. I think it'd be really cool. So that was the last thing I wanted to talk about. Spend a couple minutes dedicated to that. But either way, I hope y'all are having a fantastic week. I do appreciate a couple of different things. One, I appreciate you listening. Two, I appreciate you disagreeing with me. So please keep sending those messages. I like those because I like my viewpoint to be as wide as possible. Four, I'm selling some merch mainly because I wanted to buy a coffee cup for myself, but I figured why not? So if you go to bonfire.com/wirelessnerd, you can support the Waves podcast. You can buy a shirt, buy a coffee cup. I make like $3 or $4 or something from each one. So that's kind of cool. Maybe it'll, help pay for my Restream subscription. But if you want to support the show that way, that's awesome. And there's a shout out, Mr. George Heckman, the latest subscriber. If you'd like to subscribe, I appreciate that as well. On the Buzzsprout link, you can contribute $3, $5, $10, $15 monthly, depending on what you want to. And I'll say hi to you every once in a while. So George, appreciate you signing up for that. Thank you so much. Other than that, have a wonderful week. I think, I can't think of much else. I'm trying to think if anything pops up, but if it does, we'll get back on here. So I hope everybody has a great week. Thanks for listening.